Sirens shred Bangkok's humid midnight as a squad of Thai soldiers in pressed khaki burst through the carved-teak doors of the Oriental Hotel's most expensive suite. Shards of crystal crunch beneath their boots. Ceiling mirrors dangle like guillotines. $250,000 worth of shattered luxury testifies to a 3-week odyssey of syringes, shattered TVs, and hallucinated demons. On a torn velvet chaise lounges a naked, bleeding man who once sold arenas on snarls alone. Billy Idol, the peroxide phoenix of MTV. He groans, half-conscious, pupils like pinheads, arms map-stitched with needle bruises. 2 medics wrestle him onto a stretcher. A third drives a sedative deep into a vein, still buzzing with black market heroin mislabeled as street corner cocaine. Flashbulbs pop. A Japanese tourist whispers, "Rockstar finish." Yet this is not a finish, merely another grotesque chapter in a saga that reads like pulp fiction written with broken guitar strings. How does a boy taunted as the Yank in post-war England transmute decades of humiliation, addiction, and near-fatal crashes into a 2025 comeback grand enough to shake the Rock Hall of Fame? Tonight we unfold that answer, weaving tightrope suspense through 8 escalating acts, each laced with hooks, sharp enough to keep even the algorithm from blinking. Stay until the last riff, because the same man rolled out of Bangkok in restraints now walks red carpets with a secret grown son, a brand new album, and a grin that warns, the rebel yell is still loaded. William Michael Albert Broad entered a ration book Britain on January 30th, 1955. The first screams of a baby drowned by the distant clang of shipyards rebuilding a blitzed empire. His mother, Joan, stitched military uniforms in a drafty room. His father, Bill, hustled as a salesman of everything from socks to encyclopedias, never quite enough to outrun post-war scarcity. They fed little William stories of Churchill and ration coupons instead of fairy tales. Opportunity seemed American-sized, so in 1958, the family boarded the SS United States and sailed into Levittown, Bright Long Island. Billy, awestruck by rows of cloned houses and seduced by bubblegum jingles on transistor radios, soaked up Elvis gyrations and Jackie Wilson falsettos until his accent curved like a Brooklyn bridge. Aged 7, he swore the Pledge of Allegiance with more gusto than the local kids, scoring the first of many outsider badges he'd one day flaunt like medals. But idols are brittle. In 1962, Bill Broad's sales job crumbled. The family shipped back to a drizzly suburb of London, where the Beatles had just traded leather for collarless suits. 10-year-old Billy unveiled his new twang to classmates who greeted it with spitballs. They hissed "Yank" across the playground, mimicking his R's. Teachers corrected every vowel, each rebuke whetting Billy's appetite for defiance. Scouting offered brief refuge until the summer fete when he dared to kiss the Scoutmaster's wife on the village green. Lips sticky with lemonade, his mother burned with shame. The troop expelled him. Billy walked home humming "Hound Dog" in open rebellion. At 13, a steel-haired chemistry teacher scrawled destiny in crimson on a report card. William is idle. Terror clenched Billy's gut. Dad would explode. Yet the insult lodged like a splinter of future glory. Idle, idle. Years later, amid clashing safety pins and beer-soaked amps, he'd shave an E, turn slur into surname, and wear it sharper than any mohawk. By 16, he obsessively glued scraps from Melody Maker to his bedroom wall. Hendrix in Paisley, Jagger mid-swoon, Bowie in a gnome dress, plotting escape from suburban glass ceilings. He practiced sneers in the mirror the way other teens practice math, learned bar chords until fingers blistered, and wrote bad poems about alienation that would soon mutate into ferocious lyric stabs. Nothing about the lad fit Union Clock futures. He wanted feedback shrieks, nicotine fog, and a crowd willing to trade Monday for madness. To get there, he needed London's seedy basements and a guitar battered enough to match a heart already bruised by belonging nowhere. The stage lights were flickering alive across town, and they were about to meet their most combustible frontman yet. Autumn 1976. London smells of mildew, polyester, and revolution. The city's glam glitter has tarnished. Bins overflow, unions strike, and unemployment inks the headlines. Out of that trash heap blooms punk, raw, furious, and deliciously cheap. Billy, now bleached a nuclear blonde by a back alley salon on Oxford Street, answers a Melody Maker ad from a prickly guitarist named Gene October. They call the project Chelsea, rehearse inside a half-demolished warehouse where rats attend sessions for free. Billy begins on rhythm guitar, but soon lunges for the mic whenever October's voice falters. Contact lenses gnaw his corneas, forcing a permanent half-squint that morphs into show-ready snarl. On stage, he kicks monitors like they owe him rent, channeling fury into every chord. 6 gigs and 1 fistfight later, Chelsea implodes. Over fry-ups at Dingwall's Cafe, Billy and bassist Tony James hatch a new alliance. Tony produces a dog-eared sociology paperback, Generation X, from Billy's mom's shelf, slaps it on the Formica, and announces, "That's us." They dream of songs that marry Keith Moon thunder to bubblegum hooks, sneering at purists who spit solely for shock value. First rehearsal, Covent Garden basement, amps buzzing like wounded neon. Billy rips chords from his guitar mid-set, strides to center mic, and orders the rest to play it harder or saw it off. The silhouette, scrawny torso, platinum spikes, locks into place. December 10th, 1976. Generation X debuts at Central School of Art. 95 curious misfits pay 50 pence each. Half the crowd is future punk royalty. Susie Sue, members of The Clash, a teenage Chrissy Hynde. The set lasts 22 minutes. 3 originals and a Buzzcocks cover, but detonates as legend when Billy leaps into the front row, spits a mouthful of beer sky high, and barks, "Your generation, up yours." By February 77, the band has blistered through 28 London gigs, each one louder, tighter, and more confrontational. Chrysalis Records senses gold, signs them for an outrageous £50,000 advance that enrages Malcolm McLaren, who calls them capitalist candy. Their self-titled debut drops March 1978. Critics brand it bubblegum punk. Translation, melodies too hummable for nihilist gatekeepers. Billy couldn't care less. Your generation cracks the UK top 40, and suddenly punk kids in Kent dye hair peroxide, not green. July finds them on top of the pops, the first punk act allowed inside the BBC's Velvet Ropes. After playback ends, they kidnap the in-house drum kit as souvenir, prompting a 10-year ban that only burnishes myth. But success splinters egos. Guitarist Bob Durwood Andrews craves Joy Division gloom. Billy wants thunderous glam. Fights over songwriting credits turn dressing rooms into war zones. Christmas 1980. Durwood quits. Drummer Mark Laff follows. Idol and James perform a last stuttering tour as Gen X before conceding the ship has sunk. Billy writes one final note in a battered diary. "London has shown me everything except a future." Underneath, he sketches an outline of Manhattan and draws a lightning bolt across it. If England felt cramped, America had skyscrapers tall enough to house his ambition, and television screens hungry for a face made of pure defiance. October 1981. One Sheridan Square is barely larger than the bed it contains, but to Idol, it smells like rebirth. Pizza exhaust, humid subway vents, and promise. Manager Bill Aucoin, fresh off turning Kiss into merchandising billionaires, predicts Idol can swap Punk's clubland confinement for arenas if he raps Rebellion in choruses FM radio can't refuse. First Gambit, 4-song EP Don't Stop. It features a swaggering cover of Tommy James's Money Money, recorded so loud the VU meters bleed red. Dance clubs in the East Village spin it between early hip-hop and new wave cuts. Soon, the track creeps to number 1, 27 on Billboard's dance chart. More important, studio sessions pair Idol with guitarist Steve Stevens, a Queen's prodigy who merges Eddie Van Halen fretfire with prog rock texturing. Stevens doubts Idol's punk credentials until he watches the Englishman face down a heckler with a single, Ice Blue Glare. Respect forged, they spend 72 hours straight inside Electric Lady Studios crafting demos that will later become White Wedding and Hot in the City. July 16, 1982, the full-length Billy Idol lands. MTV, launched barely a year before, loops White Wedding 24/7, Gothic Chapel, Cobra-wrapped wrists, Idol licking a blood-red ring from wedding cake icing. Suburban moms clutch pearls, teens imitate the snarl in bathroom mirrors, and the single rockets up the Hot 100. Idol's next conquest begins at a Rolling Stones after-party in Manhattan. he spots a bottle of Rebel Yell bourbon passing between Keith Richards and Ronnie Wood. "Is that a real drink or some private joke?" he asks. When told it's legit, he grins. "Mind if I borrow the name?" They shrug. He scribbles it onto a cocktail napkin. Back in the studio, Chrysalis executives harp on radio-friendly sheen. Idol Counters steals the unmixed master tapes at 3 a.m. and hands them, legend insists, to his heroin dealer for safekeeping. He threatens to leak bootlegs unless granted full creative veto. Label acquiesces. November 10th, 1983. Rebel Yell obliterates expectations. Multi-platinum US, platinum Canada, gold Germany. 4 hit singles, 56-city world tour. Idol stalk stages in leather trousers so tight, roadies joke they're tattooed on. Fire column pyros scorch venue ceilings while fans chant more, 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 replicating the title track's tribal chorus. Yet the after-parties grow longer than the shows. Idol downs Jack Daniels like sports drinks, snorts Coke lines laced with whatever fits the straw, and still manages 50 push-ups before encores. Photographers capture him exiting nightclubs at dawn, shades on, torso glittering with sweat, and someone else's lip gloss. MTV's relentless rotation makes him a poster boy for an entire decade. The sneer, the fist pump, the peroxide halo. But television screens bleach context. Behind the bravado, adrenaline blotches are morphing into panic tremors. Ambition is feeding a new, insatiable beast called excess. And once you start feeding that beast, it never stops asking for bigger sacrifices. By 1984, Billy Idol was living at a velocity that would have liquefied most mortals. The turning point came on the set of Eyes Without a Face, a shoot lit so hot that he kept the same hard contact lenses in for 36 straight hours. When a sheriff woke him from a catnap on a Tucson runway, he opened his eyes to a storm of needles. The lenses had fused to his corneas. 2 days in blackout bandages saved his sight, but the morphine that dulled the pain also whispered dark promises. One prescription became two blurred into road cases packed with anything that would keep the needle of his adrenaline meter pinned to red. The next 5 years unspooled like a fever dream. Hotel minibars turned into chemistry sets. After parties bled into dawn workouts and then straight onto stage. Love, whatever that word meant at 3 a.m., was a revolving door. Harry Lister might appear in the white wedding gown 1 month. Real Housewife Sonia Morgan the next. Melissa Gilbert stumbling out of Rick James's mansion the month after that. Idol answered every accusation with the same lopsided grin. A rebel does as he pleases. Icarus really started to plummet in Bangkok, 1989. Vowing to dry out, Idol landed in Thailand and promptly bought what he thought was cocaine from a taxi driver. It was pharmaceutical-grade heroin. He vanished into a 3-week blackout, racking up $250,000 in damage at the Oriental Hotel until Thai soldiers burst in, strapped him naked to a stretcher, and carted him past horrified tourists. The legend said they used a tranquilizer dart. Idol only remembers ceiling fans spinning like helicopter blades and somebody yelling that the show was over. 3 months later, a Hollywood sunrise found him throttling a Harley through a stop sign and straight into the side of a sedan. Surgeons threaded a titanium rod the length of a microphone stand through his shattered femur. James Cameron's gleaming vision of Idol as the T-1000 in Terminator 2 evaporated. Robert Patrick jogged away with the part while Idol pressed a morphine button and wondered whether he'd ever run again. He limped into 1991 determined to behave, only to break a 6-month streak of sobriety in the back of a car outside a West Hollywood restaurant where a drunken swing left a woman concussed, and Idol pleading guilty in court. The judge spared him jail but sentenced him to a public service announcement, 15 humiliating seconds that ran on cable channels he once ruled. By 1994, the collapse was complete. He keeled over outside the Roxbury, ambulance lights painting his leather jacket mortuary white. Official statements blamed exhaustion, but EMTs whispered GHB. Magazine editors finally printed the pre-written obituaries they'd been stockpiling since Bangkok. What those obits missed was the slow, stubborn drumbeat still rattling inside Idol's chest, one that would find its way back to rhythm long after the headlines moved on. The silence after Scandal is deafening, and Idol spends most of 1995 hearing nothing but the anxious tick of his kitchen clock in Laurel Canyon. Daylight pours in through stained glass windows bought during a France tour he barely remembers, illuminating the mess of half-written lyrics, broken pics, and therapy homework pages. Probation requires counseling. Survival demands it. He starts every morning with black coffee, nicotine gum, and an AA meeting in a church basement that smells like yesterday's potluck. There, the swagger folds away. He listens to a former banker sob about cocaine ruin, a teenage runaway praying not to relapse. The humility bruises his ego, but scours the rot from his bloodstream. Afternoon hours find him on the living room floor with son William Wolfe building Lego starships. Nights he drives the winding roads above LA with the radio off just to hear what sobriety sounds like. By 97, he's strong enough to pick a guitar without reaching for a bottle. He calls Steve Stevens, long estranged after Bangkok, and leaves a voicemail. Fancy finishing what we started, mate. Stevens arrives within the hour carrying his neon-striped Les Paul, and the two plug straight into twin Marshall stacks. Riffs roar through the canyon, sending coyotes trotting for quieter hillsides. They jam until sunrise, discovering a new chemistry lighter on cocaine and heavier on groove. The public preview sneaks out in 1998 when director Frank Corazzi casts Idol as himself in The Wedding Singer. The 90-second cameo is lightning. Idol secures first-class tickets, rescues Adam Sandler's lovelorn hero, then throws a winking thumbs up at the camera. Gen Xers howl in theaters. Millennials ask their parents about the bleach blonde rebel. VHS sales soar. Reviving royalties Idol hasn't seen since MTV's prime. He parlays the buzz into club dates. No pyro, just sweat and nostalgia. Ticket demand shocks promoters. Idol sees a second horizon. Over the next 3 years, he writes piles of riffs reflecting survival instead of destruction, hammering choruses onto sobriety's anvil. He experiments with Pilates, trades Marlboros for marathon cycling along the Pacific Coast Highway, and even sneaks meditation apps onto his battered iPod. Then, April 2005, 13 years after critics declared him finished, Idol detonates Devil's Playground. The album is rage with a hopeful grin. Feedback storms, gospel organs, Stevens dive bomb solos, led single scream stamps onto Need for Speed, Underground 2, gifting Idol his first digital-era hit. The subsequent tour sells out theaters once reserved for acts half his age. Magazine's headline, Idol rises, no flames needed. He follows Triumph with head-tilting curveball, December 2006's Happy Holidays. Critics are stunned, but Idol's Sin and Snowman mashup works. German shoppers push the record to number 1, 22, proving even punks adore sleigh bells when sung by a reformed Hellraiser. It is the first sign that Idol can bend genres without snapping credibility. But the true resurrection talisman arrives October 2014, Dancing with Myself, a 336-page memoir, equal parts confessional and gonzo travelogue. He pours Bangkok vomit, Harley Chrome, lost loves, and late-night terrors onto paper with enough candor to shame decades of sanitized rock bios. Rolling Stone crowns it year's best autobiography. The Guardian calls it rock's most honest mirror. Bookstore queues twist around city blocks. Idol, now 59, signs copies with a grin and a sobriety chip on his keyring. If the 1980s crowned him king, the 2010 forge him into something rarer, a survivor who sings the map of his scars, louder and clearer than any cautionary PSA ever could. But legacies like amps go to 11, so Idol cranks still harder, trading memoir applause for a war drum countdown to his biggest late career gambit yet. The memoir's glow puts Idol back on festival radars, and in 2016, he agrees to a 2-year Las Vegas residency at the House of Blues, christened Billy Idol Forever. Opening night sells out in 9 minutes. Pyro columns kiss the ceiling as Stevens rips the Rebel Yell intro. Idol appears through smoke in a sleeveless leather trench, biceps marked by fresh phoenix tattoos, inked to commemorate sobriety's decade mark. Vegas becomes a boot camp for refinement. 4 shows a week means 4 chances to tweak lighting cues, guitar tones, set list pacing. Idol studies crowd reactions like a data analyst, truncating flesh for fantasy outro by 10 seconds when phone screens start to glow, stretching the more bridge when he senses bathroom traffic. Yelp reviews read like revival tent testimonies. Haven't felt this alive since 1985, writes one 80-year-old tourist. The residency bankrolls Kings and Queens of the Underground 2014 promotion across 3 continents, but more crucially cements Idol as Professor Emeritus of Stagecraft. Pop stars in their 20s slip backstage to take notes on his call and response sorcery. K-pop choreographers screen record Vegas footage to study his mic stand ballet. He becomes the opposite of nostalgia. He becomes a blueprint. March 2018 delivers symbolism too rich for fiction. Perched outside the Los Angeles Convention Center, Idol raises his right hand and swears the oath of U.S. citizenship. Cameras click as he recites, "It's a nice day for a naturalization ceremony," cheekbones sharpening like punctuation. Within 24 hours, the meme cycle produces GIFs of him waving a miniature flag under the caption, "Rebel Yell Now Taxable." The walk of validation continues May 2023 when Hollywood Boulevard unveils Billy Idol's Walk of Fame star. Longtime fan and Rebel Yell producer Keith Forsey kneels to brush dust from the pink terrazzo. Idol kneels beside him, kisses the surface, then jokes, "Tastes almost as good as the floor of CBD." Global live stream comments erupt in confetti emojis. Meanwhile, streaming resurrects back catalog riches. TikTok teens repurpose the White Wedding downbeat as a transition audio for clothing swap challenges. Eyes Without a Face soundtracks cottagecore garden montages. Monthly Spotify listeners shoot past 15 million, higher than some current chart staples. Idol tweets, "From vinyl to viral. Cheers, kids!" and attaches a devil horn emoji. To capitalize, he and Stevens drop twin EPs, The Roadside, 2021, and The Cage, 2022, each 4 tracks of lean, high-gain modern rock. Lead cut Bitter Taste, reflecting on the 1990 crash. "I lost so much, but I made it mine." Climbs active rock radio, spending 8 weeks in the top 20. Critics hail Idol's voice for retaining smoked oak grit, topped by an evergreen falsetto. With catalog redeified, box office roaring, and royalties gushing again, Idol gazes at a fresh mountain, creating a statement album that could stand next to Rebel Yell instead of merely nodding at it. He circles a release window, spring 2025, and begins stitching skeleton riffs in a Malibu studio overlooking waves that used to soundtrack hangovers, now fueling dawn-hour writing sprints. But the project needs gasoline, and a spark the size of a confession that could shake standing ovations into something deeper. Empathy met with awe. Nobody expected a man who'd nearly bled out on 3 continents to roar back with the most ambitious year of his life. But that is exactly what Billy Idol did in 2025. It began on an ordinary Tuesday in February when he posted a grainy Polaroid of a mixing console with the caption, "Dream into it, 4/25/25. Within minutes, Dark Horse Records confirmed the rumors. Idol had spent the past 2 years crafting his first full-length album in over a decade with producer Tommy English, trading riffs with Steve Stevens, while Avril Lavigne, Joan Jett, and Alison Mosshart dropped in to coat choruses with Gasoline. Pre-saves rocketed to the top of iTunes in 17 countries before a single note was public. 6 weeks later, New York's Tribeca Film Festival rolled its Midnight Madness slot for Billy Idol Should Be Dead, Ondi Timoner's No Mercy documentary that ripped open every sealed chapter Idol thought he'd survived. Viewers learned he had flatlined for 42 seconds during an unreported 1984 speedball overdose in Miami, revived only because a paramedic refused to quit compressions. Just when gasps began to fade, the screen revealed a final twist. A quiet Croatian sound engineer named Rocky Popovic carrying a DNA test that proved Idol had fathered him during the 1983 Rebel Yell tour. Cameras captured their backstage embrace. Idol's eyes glassy, Rocky's trembling with relief, and Twitter's servers nearly melted under the hashtag Hirsch, Sneer, and Son. While social feeds tried to absorb that, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame announced its annual fan vote. Idol debuted at 4th place behind Oasis and Mariah Carey, but TikTok teenagers launched Joyce Sneer for the Hall, lip-syncing White Wedding while perfecting his signature curled lip. Millions of 15-second videos nudged him up the leaderboard until on the final voting day, he sat one notch below Oasis, well within striking distance of induction. Even Pitchfork, once allergic to nostalgia, ran a think piece arguing that Idol's master tape heist had paved the way for modern artists reclaiming their catalogs. April 25th arrived, and Dream Into It did not tiptoe. It detonated. The record debuted at number 1, 7 on Billboard's top album sales at number 2 in Germany, and gave Idol his highest UK chart position since 1990. He celebrated by hijacking a flatbed truck outside Amoeba Records in Hollywood, blasting Bad Blood Boogie while traffic cops danced instead of writing tickets. Clips of the stunt clogged every social platform before the last chord faded. Summer turned up the heat. Idol and Joan Jett hit the road on the Dream Yell tour, trading riffs beneath rotating LED monoliths that mashed vintage MTV clips with live drone shots of 50,000-strong crowds. Reviewers marveled that a 69-year-old man could sprint the length of a catwalk in leather pants and still nail every note of Rebel Yell. Backstage, he downed electrolyte slushies, FaceTimed his granddaughter, then strutted back out for encores like the concept of burnout had been outlawed. By autumn, Netflix had secured documentary rights, Spotify launched a companion podcast, and TikTok's number Rebel Yell Challenge had toddlers to retirees flashing devil horns in living rooms worldwide. Financial writers pointed out that the tour's receipts, adjusted for inflation, eclipsed Idol's 1984 peak. Idol just shrugged, flashed that ageless sneer, and muttered the line that had carried him from Bangkok stretchers to Hollywood truck bed stages: "The show ain't over until I say it is." By autumn, streaming platform jockeying intensifies. Netflix wins rights to the documentary, plus a companion concert film shot at London's O2. They announce Idolverse, an interactive hub bundling lyric annotated videos, 1980s concert footage restored to 4K, and mini masterclasses where Idol dissects his vocal technique, like holding a rasp on More without shredding chords. Subscription signups surge 11% the first weekend. Spotify counters by unveiling Rebel Radio with Billy Idol, a weekly podcast where he and Stevens analyze cult tracks from X-Ray Specs to 9 Inch Nails, inviting guests from Dave Grohl to Willow Smith. Episode 1 trends global top 3 in music podcasts, overtaking longtime fixture Song Exploder. Idol jokes. The only thing cooler than biting heads off bats is dissecting beats with your best mate. TikTok, hungry for retention, launches an official hashtag Rebel Yell Challenge using a 15-second loop of Idol's 2025 re-recorded chorus, layered over trap hi-hats. Within 72 hours, toddlers to retirees fling devil horns in sync. Digital marketing think pieces dub Idol the accidental cross-generational whisperer. Tour merch includes AR-enabled patches, scan the stitched sneer, and your phone projects a hologram Idol reciting the more line in your living room. At shows, fans raise phones. Entire arenas bloom with thousands of mini Idols spinning like 1980s kaleidoscopes, a spectacle equal parts punk and Pokemon. Financial papers notice. Billboard box score tallies $64 million in gross receipts by tour's end, eclipsing his 1984 peak when adjusted for inflation. Idol invests profits in clean energy startups, tweeting, "Every rebel needs a planet to rage on." Fast Company profiles him under sustainable rock stars, calling his pivot leather-clad ESG, yet he refuses to coast. October 2025, he sneaks into Joshua Tree's Sonic Ranch studio with St. Vincent and producer Jack Antonoff to cut a 14-minute epic tentatively titled Desert Frequency. Rumor claims rhythmic breathing recorded inside an abandoned missile silo layers under the bridge. Idol just smirks on Instagram. Sound needs space. The flame-colored sneer, once symptom of teenage disdain, now functions like a philosopher's grin, aware that life's joke is on any system thinking it can label him bygone. But before the year ends, Idol has one final pyrotechnic chord to strike, one that binds every misstep, hit single, and redemption note into an echo none of us will escape. Billy Idol once told an interviewer, "I've always been halfway between living and burning alive." That tightrope defines his saga better than platinum plaques ever could. He took every outsider sting, yank, idol, sell out, and alchemize them into brand insignias. He smuggled bubblegum melodies into punk's broken glass parade, ransomed master tapes for creative freedom decades before Twitter would call it "own your masters," and stared down addiction not with tidy pop star apologies, but with a scorched earth memoir that passed his own flaws through a megaphone. Standing now in 2025's spotlight, steel rod silent in his leg, pupils clear instead of pinpricked, Idol doesn't preach anti-drug mantras or mock sobriety slogans. He squeezes a mic, kicks the air, and shows by breathing proof that resurrection is an art you practice every damn day. His voice, still leather-wrapped sandpaper, belts lines new generations sing without irony. If I had the chance, I'd turn it all around. Fans scream back, some remembering VHS days, some arriving via For You page fate. And in that echo, tens of thousands of throats uniting between flame cannons and LED constellations. You hear the simplest miracle. Billy Idol gave the world permission to be loud about its scars, to wear mistakes like medals polished by time instead of shame. Whether 2025's Hall of Fame induction letter bears his name or withers under committee politics is almost irrelevant now. Idol has built a hall within our rib cages, paneled in memories of first kisses sung to eyes without a face, backyard parties shattered by white wedding choruses, treadmill mornings fueled by Dream Into It. The soldiers in Bangkok thought the stretcher was an ending. The Harley crash looked like a punctuation scar. Miami's hidden flatline read like a period stamped on rebellion sentence. Each proved instead a comma, because the rebel yell, raw, ragged, and weirdly reassuring, still rises at dusk, daring the night to shout back. So if you catch yourself doubting you can outrun yesterday's mess, cue up Bad Blood Boogie and listen for the snarl that rewired fate. Remember a kid named William who never fit, who took an insult for a surname, and who still, at 69, croons over pyro clouds while LED halos crown a stage. He was never idle. He was always irrevocably idle. And he's still dancing with himself, only now he invites us all to jump in the circle and burn a little brighter beside him.